It was during the Kennedy administration that this nation enjoyed its first and greatest victories in space. Here is NBC News reporter Roy Neal.
Soon after John F. Kennedy took office, he began to demonstrate that he had great interest in space and did not enjoy the second-place position in which the United States found itself in some space achievements. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration was realigned on an executive level in the first year of the Kennedy administration. James Webb was made the administrator, and the then Vice President, Lyndon Johnson, as head of the National Aeronautics and Space Council, began to take an active and direct interest in the national programs. At that time, President Kennedy made the first of what was to be a continuing series of speeches and statements describing the need, as he put it, to chart the uncharted oceans of space and set the national goal to send a man to the moon and bring him safely back. Since then, his program is well illustrated by the funds he was able to obtain for its support. In 1961, Alan Shepard made the first suborbital flight from Cape Canaveral. The president had the astronaut come to Washington to address a joint session of Congress. The Space Administration's budget was passed shortly thereafter at a record $1.4 billion. The following year, 1962, when John Glenn's flight was delayed, President Kennedy summoned the astronaut to the White House. Glenn told me later that that session was devoted to no other purpose than that the president wanted to reassure him of continuing support. After Glenn did fly, President Kennedy paid a personal visit to Canaveral. To those of us who were there, it was obvious that he enjoyed being part of the space age. Glenn, too, was brought back to Washington for a joint session of Congress, and now, under White House guidance, the space budget jumped to $3.75 billion. Glenn became a national hero and a personal friend of the Kennedys. On more than one occasion since, all 7 of the original astronauts have been invited visitors to the White House. This year, for the first time, Mr. Kennedy ran into trouble getting approval for a still further increased space budget, over $5 billion. His recent actions proved again his continuing support. They have included another personal visit to Cape Canaveral last weekend, and to the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, and a whole series of speeches which put him squarely on record selling the space programs. President Kennedy believed a great deal could be accomplished in space on a cooperative basis with Russia. In a recent speech before the United Nations, he proposed a cooperative manned moon flight with the Soviets. That speech created a problem for the men who backed the space budget, but it also reflected his belief in the need to keep space for peaceful purposes. There is, of course, much more to space technology than manned flight. During the Kennedy administration, there's been an instrument flight to the planet Venus, and communication satellites have begun to transmit television between the continents. By coincidence, today was the first day for television transmission via relay satellite from the United States to Japan. Mr. Kennedy had recorded a short statement at the White House for that first telecast. It was not transmitted because of his death, but it reflects his estimation of the importance of space-age technology.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a good deal of pleasure through this first television transmission, the orbiting satellite relay, to extend a very warm greeting to the people of Japan, that we're able to speak simultaneously across the Pacific, which has appeared to many as a barrier rather than as a bridge, indicates how shrinking our world is and how important it is that we establish the most intimate relations between Japan and the United States, between Japan and the United States and other countries of the world. We've been attempting in recent months and recent years to make those ties more intimate. We met last May in Japan to discuss how our scientific communities could work more closely together. We met here in Washington with some of your leading scholars to discuss how we could have a greater understanding of our cultural traditions there in Japan, here in the United States. And now at this time they're meeting in Japan to taking part on the economic study of trade and economic progress, a group of cabinet officers from the United States who are returning a visit of your cabinet officers who came here to the White House a year ago. In all these ways, we are working to strengthen the ties of friendship between Japan and the United States, ties of understanding. And I hope this quick communication by satellite many thousands of miles away from us all will be a means of making our people live more closely together, bringing peace to them. To the people of Japan, I send the best wishes to the people of the United States for happiness, for prosperity, and for peace. Thank you.
That was a recorded statement of greetings to the people of Japan to be broadcast and transmitted today by relay satellite to the people of Japan. The broadcast was canceled because of the President's death.